All right, well, 33.2 is about the blood and lymphatic system. And our far side says, as a witness later recalled, two small dogs just waltzed into the place, grabbed the cat, and then waltzed out. Our goal is to explain the significance of genetic factors, environmental factors, and pathogenic agents to health from the perspective of both individual and the public health. Let's move on to our objectives then. Our objectives are to explain the functions of blood plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, describe the role of the lymphatic system, list 3 common circulatory diseases, and then describe the connection between cholesterol and the circulatory disease too. All right, so when you think about body tissues, you probably picture something with a definite shape, like muscle or skin. But blood is a tissue too. It just happens to be in the liquid form. Blood has many important functions. In addition to transporting oxygen and fighting disease, it carries substances your body makes and sources of energy such as sugars and fats. In fact, one of the best ways to judge a person's health is by a blood test. How does this unusual tissue perform with so many essential functions? Well, we're going to learn about that today. Our first objective is to explain the functions of blood plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So in addition to serving as the body's transportation system, the various components of blood also help regulate body temperature, fight infections, and produce clots that help minimize the loss of body fluids from wounds. Plasma, as you can see the yellow stuff right here, contains, the human body contains 4 to 6 liters of blood. About 55% of the total body volume is the straw-colored fluid called plasma. Plasma is about 90% water, and then 10% dissolved gases, salts, nutrients, enzymes, hormones, waste products, plasma, proteins, cholesterol, and just about anything else, important compounds. The water in plasma helps to control the body temperature. Think about why that is. We'll talk about that in class too. And plasma proteins consist of 3 types: albumin, globulins, and fibrinogen. Albumin and globulins transport substances such as fatty acids, hormones, and vitamins. Albumin also plays an important role in regulating osmotic pressure and blood volume. Some globulins fight viral and bacterial infections, and fibrinogen is necessary for blood to clot. And we'll learn about why that is later also. The most numerous cells in blood are red blood cells, or erythrocytes. The main function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. Red blood cells get their crimson red color from the iron in hemoglobin, a protein that binds oxygen in the lungs and releases it in capillary networks throughout the body. Red blood cells then transport some carbon dioxide to the lungs. Red blood cells are discs that are thinner in their center and along their edge, right here. They are produced by cells in red bone marrow. As red blood cells mature and fill with this hemoglobin, their nuclei and other organelles are forced out. Red blood cells circulate for an average of 120 days before they are then destroyed in the liver and spleen. White blood cells. White blood cells are also called leukocytes. Then they guard against infection, fight parasites, and attack bacteria. The body can increase the number of active white blood cells dramatically when it is fighting an infection. White blood cells are produced from stem cells in the bone marrow, but unlike red blood cells, white blood cells keep their nuclei and can live for years. White blood cells are not confined to blood vessels. Many white blood cells can also slip through the capillary walls to attack foreign organisms. They're great fighters for us. There are different types of white blood cells, and they have different functions, protective functions. For example, we have macrophages, right there it is, which engulf pathogens. We have lymphocytes that are involved in the immune response, and there are B lymphocytes, which I don't have here, and then T lymphocytes. The B lymphocytes produce antibodies that fight infection and also help provide immunity, and the T lymphocytes help fight tumors and viruses. In a healthy person, the white blood cells are outnumbered by the red blood cells by almost 1,000 to 1. So if you have a white blood count that's raised, that probably means you have an infection. Because normally, 1,000 to 1 is what ratio you're looking for. Blood clotting. Blood clotting is made possible by plasma proteins and cell fragments called platelets. The cytoplasm of certain bone marrow cells divides into thousands of small membrane-enclosed fragments that break off and enter the blood as platelets, these little things right there. When platelets come in contact with the edges of like a broken blood vessel, see little platelets right there, their surface then becomes sticky and they start clustering around the wound. These platelets then release a clotting factor called thromboplastin, which then converts the protein prothrombin into an enzyme called thrombin. The thrombin, as you can see right here, converts the soluble plasma protein, remember the fibrinogen? The plasma protein fibrinogen into something insoluble and causes these sticky little fibrin filaments, which then form the clot. The clot seals the damaged area and then prevents further blood loss. Pretty cool, huh? So our objective 1 is to explain the function of blood plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and then platelets. Plasma is about 90% water and 10% dissolved gases, everything else. The main function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen. The white blood cells are there to guard against infections, fight parasites, and attack bacteria. And blood clotting is made possible by the plasma proteins and cell fragments that we call platelets. Moving on to objective 2 then. Describe the role of the lymphatic system. All right, so as blood passes through its capillaries, some blood cells and components of plasma move through the capillary walls into the fluid between the cells, carrying nutrients, dissolved oxygen, and salts. That's my dog. Stop crying. Shh. Most of this fluid is known as lymph, is reabsorbed into the capillaries, but not all of it. The rest goes into the lymphatic system, which is a network of vessels, as you can see here, little nodes right there, and organs, all right, that collects the lymph that leaves these capillaries and then screens it for these little microorganisms that might be there, and then returns it back to the circulatory system. The lymphatic system is also involved in the absorption of nutrients and in immunity. Lymph collects in a system of lymphatic capillaries that slowly conducts it into larger and larger lymph vessels. These lymph vessels, as you can see here, all have valves, similar to valves in large veins, that move the lymph along and then also prevent it from flowing backwards, downwards. Pressure on lymph vessels from the surrounding skeletal muscles help move the lymph through the system into larger and larger ducts. These ducts return the lymph to the body through openings in the subclavian, here it is, the subclavian artery right here, all right, veins just below our shoulders right here. So when injury or disease blocks the lymphatic vessels, lymph can then accumulate in this tissue, causing swelling called edema. The lymphatic system also plays an important role in the absorption of nutrients too. A system of lymph vessels that runs along the intestines picks up fats and fat-soluble vitamins from the digestive tract and then transports these nutrients back into the bloodstream. Hundreds of small bean-shaped enlargements called lymph nodes, as you can see here, are scattered along lymph vessels throughout the body. Lymph nodes act as filters, trapping these microorganisms or stray cancer cells, God forbid, and debris as lymph flows through them. White blood cells inside lymph nodes that engulf or destroy this cellular trash. When large numbers of microorganisms are trapped in lymph nodes, the nodes then become swollen. The swollen glands are symptoms of certain kinds of infections, or actually the swollen lymph nodes, like we have when we get our swollen throats there. As you can see there. The thymus right there and the spleen right there play important roles in the immune functions of the lymphatic system. The thymus, located beneath the sternum, all right there, as I pointed out previously, is where the T lymphocytes mature before they can function in the immune system. Blood flows through the spleen, where it is cleansed of microorganisms and other debris. The spleen also removes old or damaged blood cells and stores platelets too. Handy dandy little thing. So our objective was to be able to describe the role of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a network of vessel nodes and organs that collects the lymph that leaves capillaries, screens it for microorganisms, and then returns it to the circulatory system. All right, let's move on to the 3 common circulatory diseases. Disease of the circulatory system can progress for many years before they are discovered. Often, the first signs of circulatory problems is an event that affects the heart or brain. Tissues in the heart and brain begin to die within moments if their oxygen supply is interrupted. Damage to heart muscles from a heart attack or to the brain from a stroke can be fatal. Individuals with high blood pressure are at an increased risk for both heart disease and stroke. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. I don't know why I didn't put something there. The heart muscles requires a constant supply of oxygen, as we discussed before. The heart is supplied with blood by 2 coronary arteries and then their smaller branches. The most common types of heart disease occur when blood flowing through these vessels is obstructed. Atherosclerosis, I hate that word, is a condition in which the fatty deposits called plaques build up, all right? They build up in the artery walls and eventually cause the artery walls to stiffen. Over time, the plaques often bulge into the center, as you can see here, bulge into the center of the vessel and restrict flow to the heart muscle. Chest pain, known as angina, can be a sign of restricted blood flow. Eventually, the heart can be weakened or damaged by oxygen deprivation, leading to a condition that we call heart failure. If the cap on a plaque ruptures, like you see right here, a blood clot may form that completely can block the artery. Clots can also form when large vessels in other parts of the body break off and block vessels in the heart that are narrowed by the atherosclerosis. A heart attack occurs as the muscle cells become damaged and then possibly die. Heart attacks can also damage the SA or AV nodes too, which can affect the heart's ability to beat in a coordinated way. Drugs such as cocaine and cigarette smoking can also lead to a heart attack. And heart attack symptoms includes, I should go back to that, nausea, shortness of breath, chest pain, and the pain in the neck, jaw, or left arm, right here. Think about why the left arm, people. People with these symptoms need immediate medical attention. Medication needs to be given quickly to increase the blood flow and then save the heart muscle. Stroke. The sudden death of brain cells when their blood supply is interrupted is called a stroke. Some strokes are caused by a blood clot that blocks a blood vessel in the brain. A stroke can also occur if a weak blood vessel breaks and causes bleeding in the brain. Symptoms of stroke include severe headache, numbness, dizziness, confusion, and trouble seeing or speaking. The results of a stroke vary depending on which part of the brain it affects. Some strokes cause death. Other strokes may cause paralysis, you know what I meant, or loss of speech. Prompt medical attention may lessen the severity of a stroke. High blood pressure is next. High blood pressure, or we also call it hypertension, is usually defined as the reading as 140/90 or higher. Because hypertension often has no symptoms, people may have it for years and not even know. Meanwhile, heart damage occurs as the heart struggles to push the blood through the vessels. Hypertension also causes small tears in blood vessels, which, as we learned before, can lead to atherosclerosis. Likewise, the stiffened arteries that result from atherosclerosis can contribute to high blood pressure. Diet, exercise, and prescription drugs can help control hypertension. Left uncontrolled, hypertension can also lead to heart attack, stroke, and kidney damage too. So the 3 common circulatory diseases were heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. Finally, objective 4. Describe the connection between cholesterol and circulatory diseases. Diseases of the circulatory system do not have a single cause. There are several factors that increase the risk of heart disease and stroke. Some risks, such as diet and exercise levels, as you can see here, can be controlled. Other risks, such as age and family history, cannot be controlled. Cholesterol is a lipid that is part of the animal cell protein membrane. It is also used in the synthesis of some hormones like bile and vitamin D. Cholesterol is transported in the blood primarily by 2 types of lipoproteins, or lipoproteins. There's low-density lipoprotein LDL, and high-density lipoprotein, HDL. LDL is the cholesterol carrier that is most likely to cause trouble in the circulatory system because it becomes part of plaque. HDL, often called the good cholesterol, generally transports excess cholesterol from tissues and arteries to the liver for the removal of the body. The liver manufactures cholesterol, which is then transported through the blood to tissues. Humans also consume cholesterol in the meat, eggs, and dairy products and fried food, especially if these foods are high in saturated or trans fat. So remember this with HDL and LDL. We discussed in class, HDL is healthy, LDL is lousy. So research indicates that high cholesterol levels, along with other risk factors, lead to atherosclerosis and higher risk of a heart attack. These researchers, Michael Brown and Joseph Goldstein, won the Nobel Prize, as you can see here, in 1985 for their research on what controls the level of cholesterol in the blood. Smart guys. Helped save a lot of lives, these two guys. Brown and Goldstein discovered the LDL receptors in the cell membrane of livers that bind LDL and take it into the cells. Once inside the cholesterol is broken down. 2, the LDL is then stored for making bile or more cholesterol. And 3 and 4 is the vesicle is broken down. I already said that. And LDL is broken down as components of stored. Okay, I already said that. So when blood and cholesterol levels are high, liver cells take cholesterol from the blood and do not make it. When cholesterol levels are low, the liver then does produce it. So Brown and Goldstein also found that some people carry genes that produce defective LDL receptors, causing 2 problems. First, without the working LDL receptors, as you can see here, the effective ones here, liver cells can't remove the cholesterol from the blood. Second, these liver cells don't get the signal to stop producing the cholesterol. People with defective LDL receptors have very high cholesterol levels, even if they don't even eat much cholesterol fat. Brown and Goldstein learned that people who eat high-fat diets store excess cholesterol in their liver cells. Those cells then stop making these LDL receptors and removing cholesterol from the blood. The excess cholesterol then is deposited in the arteries. A diet that is high in cholesterol can cause symptoms similar to those of genetic disease. Brown and Goldstein's work led to the development of drugs that can help people with high cholesterol. For example, they developed these statins, drugs that block the synthesis of cholesterol in liver cells, stimulating the liver to produce more LDL receptors, which then removes the excess cholesterol from the blood. So, prevention of heart disease starts when you're young, with healthy habits that include a balanced diet, regular exercise, and not smoking. A healthy diet lowers the risk of your livers failing to regulate cholesterol properly and may protect your arteries from atherosclerosis. Exercise strengthens your heart muscles and helps your circulatory system work efficiently. Never starting to smoke will protect your circulatory system from many, many dangerous chemicals in the smoke too. So eat healthy, exercise, and don't smoke. Objective 4 was describe the connection between cholesterol and circulatory disease. The research indicates that high cholesterol levels, along with other risk factors, lead to atherosclerosis and a higher risk of heart attack. And these are our 4 objectives. I hope you know them because they all support to explain the significance of genetic factors, environmental factors, and pathogenic agents to the health and perspective of both individual and the public health. Oh, sorry, no cute picture.